Good morning, SEMO, and welcome back to another episode of Hawks Nest. I'm your host, Maddox Murphy, and joining me are Dylan Nooner and Isaiah Collins. Today, we will dive into the baseball and softball teams, as well as talking about the upcoming spring football game. Make sure to stick around until the end of the video for the Athlete Spotlight of the Week. All that and more coming up on this episode of Hawks Nest.
This past weekend, SEMO Baseball continued their conference schedule, winning 2 out of 3 at home against SIUE. In Game 1, they won 15-4, thanks to a huge 6th inning, scoring 8 runs. Josh Cameron had a big game, going 3 for 5, driving in 2, and freshman Brooks Kettering hit an absolute bomb for his first career collegiate home run to help lift the Redhawks to victory. Game 2, pretty disappointing. Lost 13-9 after being up 9-1 heading into the 8th inning before the bullpen just fell apart, giving up 9 runs in that 8th inning and ultimately dropping the game. And then Game 3, back to normal, Redhawks rolled a victory 13-3, went up early, 6 runs after 2 innings, and then pitcher Sam Hyman continued his great season. Goes to 3-0. He went 6 innings, 3 runs on 6 hits, striking out 5. They're also led offensively by senior Ty Stouse. He went 3 for 5, with 4 RBIs, including a home run in that game. And again, just a huge offensive outburst from this team is what we've been talking about. And we knew that coming into the season that they were going to rely on that offense. Again, they scored 37 runs in a 3-game set. So what do you guys kind of have to take out of this series that we saw out of the Redhawks this weekend?
Yeah, I think it's been kind of a trending thing we've been seeing. Obviously, our offense is so strong. And, in that second game, we struggled with the pitching, the bullpen. The kids who came out of the bullpen just struggled a little bit. That was obviously a disappointing end to that game. The first Fill the Hill Friday. I know everyone was really excited. But I think we saw some really great things. And you cannot undermine this offensive success. We have so many players that are contributing right now. Some of them are young, lots of them are transfers. I just think it's a fun team to watch.
Yeah, I think one thing you have to take away from this series was resiliency. They had the big victory in Game 1, but after the crushing defeat in Game 2, where they had a very extremely difficult collapse, to come back Game 3 and just take care of business the way they did shows to me that they didn't let it stick in their head and they were able to just move on to the next game.
Right, and I think another good sign that we saw was the pitching outside of that 8th inning, in Game 2. So I think that's something that we can really look forward to is that pitching, because that's kind of been the next step we've been talking about with this team to kind of get back to the top of the OVC. So after this weekend, the Redhawks moved to 14-14 overall. They sit at 5-1 in the OVC, which is good for first place, and they'll travel to Little Rock, Arkansas, take on the second place team in a weekend showdown.
As for softball, they headed to Evansville to face Southern Indiana this past weekend. They had a doubleheader on Friday and played on Saturday as well. And coming into the series, SEMO had held a 20-2 lead in their all-time series against Southern Indiana. So we had high hopes for this. And unfortunately, it was a little bit of a struggle. We saw some good things, but we lost 2 of the 3 games. We saw Game 1, it was a really great pitching performance from Southern Indiana's team. We kind of struggled to capitalize on those scoring opportunities. And in Game 2, we had a super dominant performance. Game 3, it was a closely contested game. We fought at the end, and it was just a little bit too late. As far as our standout players for softball, all season we've talked about Aubrey Shore, but we actually saw a lot more from some other players this week. Freshman Maddie Carney, in only her 3rd start, allowed only 4 hits and 6 scoreless innings for the Game 2 win. So great to see that from her. We also saw freshman Brittany Affelter had a good hitting weekend. She led the team in hits in 2 of the 3 games.
It's not what you would have hoped for, losing a series after winning back-to-back series and seeming to finally get your stride going, but the season doesn't get much easier. Tomorrow they play number 11 team in the country, the Missouri Tigers. It's getting to a point in which we're a little bit too late in the season to say they're just going to turn it around.
It has been a tough schedule. I know they have started their conference schedule, so you expect them to turn around their performances. But yeah, like you said, disappointing for sure to go in. Southern Indiana, like you mentioned, Maddox had some great pitching performances against us. kind of shut down that offense that we talk so highly about here on the show. I think this Mizzou, even though they are, like you said, nationally ranked, I think if they can go in there and maybe not even get a win, but just compete and kind of build that confidence and say, hey, we can play with these tougher competition. Let's get some momentum going for our conference schedule. I think that would be the best case scenario here for this softball team.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with both of you. Obviously, as they played such a tough schedule early in the season, we thought that they would kind of come into this conference play and dominate. Not what you want to see, but hopefully they pick up the pace and have a good outing at Mizzou.
SEMO football is making a start to their 2024 spring season, concluding with the spring game on April 20th. The team is coming off a tough season, but over the next couple weeks, we'll be trying to preview the team in terms of what you should be looking forward to for the Red Hawks in 2024. We're starting this week off with defense. The defense loses several key contributors, including All-American safety Lawrence Johnson, defensive backs Henry Pickens Jr., Eric Ivory, and Antonio Taylor, as well as inside linebacker Christian Furman. The team does bring back several key contributors, including 2022 All-OVC performers, defensive lineman Stephen Lewis, and defensive back Ty Leonard, as well as bringing back their team leader in interceptions last year, Jodrick Lewis, and inside linebacker, first-team All-OVC performer for 2023, Bryce Norman. Norman led the team in tackles, sacks, and also had an interception and a fumble return for a touchdown. The team overall had a rough year last year on defense, giving up multiple late-game leads. Guys, what do you think needs to change for the defense going into next season?
Well, I think you just said it right there, the late game leads. You know, they would get up or they'd be right neck and neck at halftime, and then you would see just kind of the second half, whether it was the personnel wasn't the right or they weren't making the necessary adjustments to keep up with the other team in the second half. I think that's the biggest thing right there.
Yeah, and obviously a lot of these players that are coming back are either seniors or they're going to be grad students. So we have a lot of veterans returning on the team, and you mentioned players like Bryce Norman. Bryce Norman is a tough player. I actually talked to him a lot last season, had a couple interviews with him, and he is kind of someone you would want playing for your program. I feel very confident in some of those players, true leaders, and I believe that they will lead that team through those in-game scenarios, and I think we'll be good.
And now it's the moment you've all been waiting for. But this week with a bit of a twist. Instead of our Spotlight Athlete of the Week, we're highlighting one of the coaches here at Southeast. Maddox, who do we have this week?
Yeah, so this week we have Coach Redburn from softball. He actually, in the second game of this weekend series, got his 250th win as SEMO's head coach. This is huge. It's his 10th season with the Red Hawks. Over his time here, he's had 30-plus wins in 4 of the 6 last seasons, 3 OVC regular season titles, 1 conference tourney in the NCAA tournament in 2019. He set the record for wins with 46 in 2019, and he's got the highest winning percentage of all of SEMO athletics in the past 7 years.
Coach Redburn's made it a goal to have softball be one of the top sports here at SEMO. He's definitely succeeded. You mentioned all the regular season success and OVC conference success they've had, as well as just some of the great players he's been able to bring in, such as Aubrey Shore right now or Rachel Rook, a few years ago, that contributed greatly to the team's success.
Yeah, and I think that's something that might get overlooked with college coaches. They're not just coaching the team. They also have to go through recruiting and keeping players here and getting transfers. And he's done a great job of that. Like you mentioned, all the great players he's brought in. Coach Redburn's done a great job here at SEMO. And that's the reason I think that the softball team still has some fight in them, and I'm not counting them out yet. It's solely because of Coach Redburn and the work he's done.
As always, we have another exciting week coming up in SEMO athletics. Take a look at what's coming up next. You won't want to miss anything. That's it for us this week. Thanks for tuning in to another episode of Hawks Nest. Make sure to follow us on socials at Southeast Arrow and at On Target Sports. I'm Maddox.
I'm Dylan.
I'm Isaiah.
And this is Hawks Nest. Have a great week.